Hi, this is Wen from Periodic Lab, and today we're going to do part 2 of my favorite podcast of the last 6-ish months. There'll be a lot, but let's get started. Number 1, in no particular order, is 30 for 30. This is the audio version on season 2 of ESPN's documentary series 30 for 30, started by Bill Simmons, I think. In this one, the episodes are highly produced and the story is really contained and world building in terms of culture around sport. I would highly recommend Madden's Game and also recommend Yankees Suck episode. I don't like sports, but I really like the way that this series is done and I highly recommend it. My second pick is A Piece of Work with Abby Jacobson. For those who are familiar with that name, she is part of the duo of Broad City. Before she became a comedian, she actually was an illustrator and is super into art. And specifically in this series, what she does is go through the MoMA, has access to curators and artists, and goes with a friend who may not know a lot about modern art and kind of talks to him about it. And she does acknowledge a lot of the silliness of modern art in terms of a blank white canvas, but at the same time, she really explains why it's so profound for its time. If you like modern art or don't like modern art, this is actually a great introduction to that whole world. Next is a fictional drama, A Very Fatal Murder. This one is kind of a parody of that traditional serial / murder thing put out by The Onion. As you know, that's a very satirical news place. And if you like American Vandal on Netflix, or if you just like the format of that mystery murder of a local town, this has a very strong attitude towards it and is quite humorous and understands the genre really well. Next, we're going to go into self-help. It's called By the Book, and it's hosted by Jolenta and Kirsten, and they basically live by the rules of different self-help books for 2 weeks, and they document the whole process of what they liked about it, what they don't like, in a very comedic way. Their chemistry is really good, and if you like to explore a lot of self-help books without reading them or just getting a gist of it, this is a really good medium to do that. They have, for the first week, what they do is they cover their experiences going through the book, and then the second one, I think they just do an epilogue of people's reaction to it and a lot of user feedback kind of thing. Next is a really highly produced podcast called Ear Hustle. It is a podcast that is made by the incarcerated inmates at San Quentin State Prison with a fellow Bay Area visual artist who volunteers there. Now, the podcast covers the culture within prison, a lot of interviews with prisonees, and it goes into the culture of what happens there, like finding roommates and being left behind, catching a kite, animals in prison, all that kind of stuff. This high production podcast is already done with its first season. I strongly suggest you check it out and then continue on to season 2, which is starting up here soon. So next was actually a recommendation. It's The Foodist with Daria Rose, and every episode she actually has a call-in person who kind of talks with them about an hour, talking to them about what they want to change about their relationship with food and what are some things that's working and not working, and even success stories. And this may not be for everyone. It was specific to my needs at the time, but she is extremely helpful and non-judgmental. At the same time, she is kind of promoting a good relationship with food instead of just specific diets. Next is Gimlets, Every Little Thing, and it is an interesting podcast that explores one specific question into extreme details through research by visiting professionals and whatnot. It is very highly produced. I would strongly suggest a flamingo episode. That one got me totally obsessed with flamingos as mascots and also how ferocious they are as animals in general. If you like the podcast, Things You Missed in History Class, you would love this. My next favorite one is Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. It's another Panoply one, and it's hosted by Vanessa and Casper. I think they are at Harvard and they went to the divinity school there. And it's not a religious heavy undertone for Harry Potter. It's more so every chapter or every week they pick a chapter from a book in the order in which they exist, and they practice a technique of analyzing the text like you would the Bible or the Quran or just sacred text. And they treat it as a sacred text. And the way they do it makes you relive Harry Potter in such a beautiful way and profound way that gives you more insight into what the characters are thinking. If you like character analysis, this is definitely for. Next is Wondery's I Hate My Boss, and it's with Larry and Liz. They both have a lot of experience in the corporate world as managers, as employees, and as also like more of a head of a department kind of situation. They really give really good advice about problems in the workplace, or if you have problems with communicating. One of the main things I got from them is when you want to communicate with people, you want to be strong, calm, and kind. The name of the show is not great for sharing with other people because it's not really about hating your boss, but I think they understand SEO enough to kind of do that. And there is also skits in here, so if you can look past that, there's some really great advice and great formatting in this work. Next one is literally a no-brainer. It's NPR's Hidden Brain. The episodes are about 30 minutes to an hour long, set on a central theme of understanding the human brain with Shankara. And it goes into psychology, neurobiology, and economics, and anything that you can think of as a main theme. It's very well produced. I don't think it's not already on a lot of people's lists. It's just one that over these last 6 or 7 months, I've actually listened to them in their entirety and found a lot of valuable things. There's a lot of great places to start. I would just say pick an episode that interests you and go with it. Next is NPR's Nancy from WNYC, hosted by Kathy and Tobin. They are queer and they cover LGBTQ experiences today in multi forms of talking to people, interviewing their own experiences. I would strongly suggest starting from the beginning, just because then you get explanation of why they call it Nancy and their own personal experience of coming out to their parents. And it's really great storytelling and reporting. So next, what I'm going to cover is not a surprise for anyone, but it's really good, is Malcolm Gladwell Revisionist History. Now, if you are a huge fan of his books, or even liked some of his books, what he's really good at is bringing in a lot of different stories or ideas into main theme. And the great thing about the podcast, it gives him the platform where he can cover one thing at a time. So one of the most interesting ones, I think, is when he talks about golf courses and the space that they take up. And every single episode is something that you will definitely feel different coming. It will just change your perspective of how you see something. For a majority of the episodes, all of them are golden, and they're few and far between. Next is Vox's, who is popular on YouTube, podcast called The Impact. It covers a lot of healthcare in the first season. I don't know if they're going to continue with that, but it is a lot of exploring how things work in terms of in the healthcare industry and how that affects people on a personal level story and as a national kind of story. Highly produced, just like their videos, so if you like Vox, definitely. Next is another Gimlet show with Brittany and Eric, and it's called The Nod, and I really like The Read. If you're a fan of that, you would like this show, except for it just doesn't cover queer, it just covers African American experiences in the US. They have a great chemistry together, and they cover a lot of really interesting topics, from very specific African American culture things, or even African American culture in pop culture. Yes, I've been on a Gimlet roll, and next is The Pitch. If you like Shark Tank, this is for you. But the great thing about this is he actually follows up after they go through the whole pitch, and you get to hear the judges, the investors talk and whatnot, why they did invest, why they didn't, and they ultimately follow up with the person who did the pitch, see how it goes at the end, and follow with them a couple months later. The products are very interesting. I think this is a better version of Shark Tank, at least an audio version, so if you like that, this is for you. Last, but certainly not least, is Roman Mars' podcast, What Trump Can Teach About Con Law. He talks about constitutional law with Elizabeth John, and if you like 99% Invisible, this is very highly produced. There's been a lot of Trump podcasts out there, and this one is actually very informational in using historical context of constitutional law and actually comparing to what Trump supposedly can do and can't do based on historical context. If you like learning about constitutional law in the US with a professor and Roman Mars, this is definitely for you. If you have any recommendations, please comment down below. I have headphones on all the time and I'm always looking for things. And thank you for watching.